Well, here's my normal commute, except that I am on a new bike. Well, new to me. This past weekend, well, a week ago, close to 2 weeks ago, I heard about this bike that was available to purchase. It was used, but barely. Had like 1,000 miles on it. It's a 2016 Yamaha FJ09. It came included with the Yamaha factory hard bags, the hard saddlebags. It's got the heated grips. They came with it. They're not installed yet, so I got to install them at some point. But fortunately, we're now entering our second week of April, so it's not the most crucial thing that I have to get done right away. So this is my first time commuting on it because I only picked it up this past weekend. It was a steal of a deal, one that I could not pass up. So I still have my other bike, the Honda CB500X. Fortunately, that thing is so cheap, doesn't really hurt the wallet having two bikes at the moment, but I will try and sell that one. But it's not like a, oh my god, I have to sell right now situation, which is good. So that bike is a fantastic commuter bike, and that's what I learned over the past year owning it. You know, so I got this, I don't know, 49 weeks shy of 1 year with the other bike. So I rode the other bike almost, I rode it for a year as my only one, and learned a lot about riding because I commuted almost every single day on that bike to work, as long as the road conditions weren't too dangerous. And by that I mean snow and ice. I commuted, didn't matter what temperature it was, as long as it was dry. And I commuted in the wet, hurricanes, crazy wind, everything other than snow and ice. And what I learned is the Honda is a great bike for commuting on because it's so economical and cheap to run and cheap to maintain. I averaged about 65 miles a gallon on that. Now granted, then in the wintertime it dropped to like the low 50s. But in the summertime I would easily be getting like 64 miles a gallon would be a bad tank for me in the summer on the Honda. So great bike for commuting on. Really the only limitation that I found was when you were already at highway speeds, you got to sixth gear so fast on that bike in its stock form. I mean, I know a lot of people changed the gearing around on it, either the front or rear, to kind of extend the gears a little bit, make them more usable in that sense. But I never did that. But you would go through the gears so fast, and you'd be at sixth gear at like 50 miles an hour, and you were already halfway through the rev range. So if you were at 70 miles an hour and you wanted to pass someone on the highway, you really had to plan that move ahead, because the bike at that point just didn't have much left. It would go faster, but it would just take a little while to get there. So I think the horsepower rating on that one was somewhere in the mid 40 range. I believe this one is about 110, 115, somewhere in that range. So I've got like 2.5 times the horsepower. So I am still getting used to it, but it's very nice to have, especially when you need to make a pass or get out of a situation. Motorcyclists will know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's a lot easier, faster, safer to just accelerate out of a situation than it is to brake, like cars typically do. So if you and a car are coming together and the car brakes and you brake, well, you're still together. So a lot of times it really is better to just accelerate out of it because you have the ability to do so. And that is just much easier to do now on this bike. So anyways, this is my first time commuting with it. Traffic isn't too terrible today. A little bit of stop and go, but I've had no problems with the clutch engagement. Still getting used to the gears a little bit, seeing where it likes to sit while we're just kind of crawling along. I tend to experiment with just starting in second gear when in traffic, just so you don't have to shift quite as often. And this bike has no problem doing that. Got plenty of torque to get it going. When I picked this bike up, the seat, which is adjustable to two different positions, high and low, was in the low position, and it was still far more comfortable. Here's an example of passing. That was so easy to do on this bike. I'm just gonna have to make sure that that sort of thing doesn't get me into too much trouble. What I was saying about the seat, though, when I picked it up, this was in the stock position, which is low, and looked it up online how to change the seat position to the higher position to give my legs a little bit more room. I'm not like crazy tall. I'm probably average, American average, 5'10", and I was not cramped at all when the seat was in the stock low position. But I was like, I want to try, and I could flat foot it. I could flat foot the bike with both feet with ease in the low position, but I wanted to see how much more room I could kind of give myself if I bumped it up to the high position. So I did that yesterday, sat on it, could no longer flat foot the bike. It was close. I could almost flat foot both feet. One, no problem. 2 feet at once, I could probably get like 85% of my foot down on both sides. And for anyone that sees this, like I said, I'm 5'10", I got about a 32-inch inseam, and stock was no problem. On the high position, it's still no problem. But I do like that I am seated up just a smidge higher, and my legs have just a smidge more room, so my knees are not quite as bent. And this is very comfortable. The seat obviously leaves people that know the bike is probably one of the major complaints about how firm it is. So we'll give it a little while. I'll ride it for a couple thousand miles, see if it's something that I can just live with. If it ends up being that it actually doesn't bother me as much as I think it might. So we'll see. Most aftermarket seats are kind of expensive, so it's kind of painful to plop down that much cash on a seat, although that is where you spend all your time, so we'll see. I do plan on changing out this windscreen. It's pretty not great, we'll just say that. I'll probably get a short windscreen for the summer months, so my helmet and shoulders are in clean air. That's nice. And then for the summer or the winter months and cold weather riding, I will probably invest in a tall touring screen so all the air goes whoop, right over me. And to tackle on the seat height adjustment, in the summer when the short screen, I could leave the seat up, so it even gives me a little bit more clearance over that windscreen. And then in the winter time, drop it down again to kind of tuck me in behind the windshield to keep the cold wind off. So this bike does not get as good mileage as my old one, but that's okay. I don't think really anything does other than like a Vespa. So this is the first tank of gas. I did not fill this tank, and I did not put like the first 50 miles on this tank of gas. Maybe 40 miles ish. So come on, what are you doing? You don't know. So I'll start tracking the gas mileage at the pump versus relying solely on the computer. Computers are never accurate. They might be close, but they're never accurate. We'll see what kind of gas mileage I get. If it's anywhere, if I can hit 50, I think on this bike, I'd be pretty happy. And that difference in miles per gallon versus the old bike is something I'm happy to live with, because 50 miles a gallon is still pretty darn good. And I'm not even 100% sure I will get rid of the old one. You know, if a buyer comes along, great, but it's kind of nice to have two bikes, because if one goes in for service, you're not stuck without a bike. You still have one. And then, you know, maybe in the winter months when the road conditions are kind of, you know, there's like road grime spraying and stuff like that, you know, maybe the other one, I'll ride that one. I won't say beater bike, but that's essentially what it would be used for. Or perhaps teaching other people how to ride, because that's a great first bike option, I think. Years ago, I started on a GSXR 600, you know, kind of typical first bike, cool guy decision. Was not the right decision. You know, I think you can become a much better rider on a smaller bike than that. I don't think that you need to go down to a 250 though, because I think it's in the end will kind of just be a little bit of a waste of money, unless you can find one used for basically nothing. That would be a good option, but I wouldn't buy a new 250 or 300. I think the 500 is a great sweet spot for a new rider, because it still gives you enough power to have some fun, and you won't get bored with it, but at the same time it's just doesn't have the scare you power that anything, you know, kind of 600 and up can have, depending on the bike, especially if it's a inline 4 600. So remains to be seen what we'll do with that one. Keep it, use it as a spare, or get rid of it if a buyer comes along. So I'm just like easily cruising at like, you know, 70, more than 70 on my other bike, and I'm not even halfway through the rev range. On the 500 I would have been approaching red line at like 74 miles an hour in 6th gear. So for extended highway riding, this is definitely going to be much nicer to have. You know, the other bike got good gas mileage, but it was so tiring to ride because you were always basically maxing out the engine, and that does get tiring after a while. Not from a day-to-day tired standpoint, but hours in the saddle, like that really can wear you down. So anyways, almost at work, so we'll wrap this one up. I wasn't even planning on talking, and I started talking. So in summary, new bike, 2016 Yamaha FJ09. Very nice. Adios.